Going back to The Division almost 6 months after release reminds me of why I was ever excited for this game in the first place. The expectation is gone, the hype replaced with curiosity, and all the pre-launch promises and marketing long forgotten. Stepping out onto the snow-covered streets of New York is properly gripping, without all that pre-launch hype weighing it down. Taking The Division for what it is, and not what the marketing promised you it will be, you finally realise that what Ubisoft have on their hands here is one of the most striking and immersive urban settings ever created in a video game. In an ironic reflection of the game's own setting of a desolate post-apocalyptic New York, The Division is a game that's trying to recover from a crisis of its own. It took a critical panning on release and quickly suffered a sharp fall in its player base despite record-breaking sales and success early on. It pitched itself as a third-person tactical shooter with MMO elements, a fact which confused audiences who were given a tight, tactical Tom Clancy shooting experience, but with enemies who took forever to go down. The gritty, realistic setting clashed too much with the gaminess of its more MMO-like combat and loot systems. Shooting an enemy with a shotgun from close range didn't send him flying across the street like you'd expect. All it did was chip 200 points off his health bar. That kind of dissonance upset and confused players who found it easier to suspend their disbelief in the other big console MMO shooter on the market, Destiny, where the sci-fi setting helped sell the illusion. Giant alien monsters can survive direct hits to the chest with a shotgun because they're giant alien monsters. It's not the same when it's just some bloke in a hoodie. But stepping back out onto the streets of New York after about 5 months away, I immediately fell back in love with the setting and the look of the game. This painstakingly accurate rendition of one of the world's most recognisable cities was built almost to exact scale, and it really pays off. There's so much detail strewn across the game's myriad streets, alleyways and interiors that it's easy to see why the developers opted for just a small slice of central Manhattan. That level of richness and detail would not have been possible across the entire island. That's one thing Ubisoft Massive absolutely nailed, and the sights and sounds of this post-catastrophe setting are easily the game's greatest strength to this day. And going back after release, I can immediately see some changes. Walking through the streets, I already sense there are more NPCs and wild dogs running loose, just to add a bit more life to what was probably a slightly too empty city at launch. The sound design in this game was nice enough when it released, but one aspect fell far short for many players, myself included, and that was the weak, hollow sounds of the weapons. Now, the developers actually went into painstaking detail in their research of firearms for this game, but realism didn't really translate into satisfaction when it actually came to playing the game. The flimsy paintball gun feel of the weapons, coupled with the really bullet-spongy enemies, undermined the kind of realistic experience The Division was trying to deliver. From what I can tell, they have added some bass and reverb to the weapon sounds and kicked up the volume a bit too, while enemies do seem to go down a tad quicker than they used to. What that does is add some much needed punch to the gunplay, so much so that it's actually starting to feel pretty satisfying. But is anyone still playing? Well, yes, actually, the game's public areas seemed pretty busy to me. It's good to see that classic MMO sight of players swarming around vendors or awkwardly running around the place trying to get stuff done before their parents shout them down for dinner. I had no problem finding some randoms to join me on a couple of the main missions too, and stepping into the Dark Zone yielded plenty of opportunity for contact with other players. Speaking of which, Ubisoft have really tried with the Dark Zone since launch. For those unfamiliar with the concept, the Dark Zone is an every man for himself, player versus player area within the game's central Manhattan map. It's where players can work together towards objectives, but betray each other at will, or even just openly aggro and attack other players. Even picking up loot here is not that easy, as players need to extract everything via helicopter, which draws enemy players in who'll have the chance to steal it. It's great in concept, but it's a tricky system to put in place by its very nature. All players are enemies, but all are potential allies as well. how do you police that kind of Wild West arena while making it fun and intriguing as a gameplay system? Well, Ubisoft, to their credit, have refused to let the dream die, despite a fair bit of resistance from the player base and negative feedback from the community. But for me, it's still too unattractive to the wider audience. Cheating is still a big problem, and the difficulty level will be far too intimidating to newcomers. It's actually a fairly suicidal prospect for first-timers in many ways, due to the predatory nature of the multiplayer, and is actually more frustrating than it is enjoyable or memorable. Sadly, it's simply not worth the effort for new players at the moment. Overall though, The Division is almost certainly worth a second look if it's sitting on your shelf untouched since release. Dark Zone problems aside, multiplayer is still fun if purely for the co-op experience. While played solo, the game is still immersive and enjoyable, if only for its breathtaking setting. Is it worth a buy now? At a bargain bin price, almost certainly. You should be able to find it at less than half of its original RRP, and for that kind of money, it's definitely worth a shot. And do bear in mind that one big chunk of DLC has already been released in the shape of Underground, which takes the fight below the streets of Manhattan into the city's sewers, maintenance tunnels and subway network. 2 more of the Division's big DLC packs have been delayed to allow developers massive time to fix the bugs that still linger and improve quality of life for players. Whatever that means. While there's plenty of visual variety to be found in No Man's Sky, almost all the ships, weapons and creatures you find in the game behave more or less the same. Yes, you'll find ships with bigger inventories or a multi-tool that mines 50% quicker,